Hey, and welcome to the Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt, that fine gentleman over there. Back in the heart of the Midwest, the one, the only, still the incomparable Dan Rubenstein. Sir!
Yeah.
One more ride in the sun here on a Sunday now afternoon, recapping all that transpired in the college football week that was. We've got rankings to discuss. How are you, good sir?
Always good. Always good, Ty. I watched a bunch of football yesterday, both American and otherwise. The American was a little bit more fun than the international football that involved an American team. Shout out men's national team. It was a nice ride. I'm good. I'm very excited to take a take journey with you because there's not really any take to be taken. With it was not a much of a surprise. The top four that was announced, the bowl matchups were sort of expected, and I guess a broader conversation about what this year's selections mean could be best. Gone back and forth on another show, but no, I'm excited to talk this all through with you. Come on.
Well, we have conference champions, and we're going to get into that here momentarily. We do have playoff matchups and some bowl matchups that are in the process of being confirmed. Hopefully by the end of this here episode, we will have a little bit more to discuss, more concrete matchups to discuss. They are still filing in at time of recording. We're doing this about 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday afternoon, December the 4th. You can watch, you can listen early if you go on out to verballers.com and sign up. We are going to have a bowl confidence pool, the Winter Wonders Bowl confidence pool. Details will be forthcoming. You can only play in that if you are a member over at verballers.com. It is my favorite thing that we do. You know how we both are when it comes to bowl confidence pools. It is my favorite pool.
Yeah, it's
out
so good.
with the whole spread thing. That didn't work for me this year, okay? I'm ready to talk some confidence pools. So verballers.com is where you can go for more on that. This episode, of course, all of our episodes, driven by our good friends over at Geico Dan. And last but certainly not least, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you follow, make sure you tell your friends. We are always interested in growing the Verballerhood. And as we get into bowl season's a lot of fun. We got all sorts of matchups to discuss. We're going to have coaching news, transfer portal stuff. The college football season does not stop when the games stop. We've got stuff to talk about all year round, all throughout the month of December, to say the least.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Even just this morning, some crankpot Twitter account said Joe Brady was going to be the new offensive coordinator at Oregon, and then an actual professional and Bruce Feldman did reporting, and I was like, no, that's not actually a thing. So that's what we get to look forward to for the next 6-8 weeks. Yay, hooray.
That is correct. So Dan, here is your final set of playoff rankings, i.e. the matchups.
Yes.
Here are the matchups. The first matchup on New Year's Eve, oh boy, they're doing this one again. It is semifinal number 1 at the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. It is Michigan. It is TCU. TCU lost, but TCU still gets in as the number 3 seed. Michigan remains the 2. The second of 2 semifinal matchups. This one at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Georgia, number 1, squaring off against Ohio State. Ohio State sneaks in at number 4. Perhaps not that big of a surprise after USC lost. The rest of the top 10 goes as follows. We had Bama at number 5, Tennessee at 6, Utah catapulting up to number 7, USC at 8, Penn State at number 9, and Clemson rounding out the top 10 at number 10. Okay.
Yes.
There will be plenty of time to talk through these matchups and which team we favor and why. I know you want to go on a bit of a take journey here with TCU.
I don't even know what my take journey is.
I know you want to go on the take journey with TCU.
It's an improv class, this episode.
I will give you an opportunity to do that now. How do you feel about these 1 through 4 playoff rankings?
I don't think they had a choice. I think this is the obvious ranking. If I were to say some part of it were to be flawed, I would say Well, Ohio State's loss was to a better team than TCU's loss if we're comparing teams that didn't win their conference or whatever. But like the idea of conference championships and divisions, and some conferences have divisions, some don't. So like the two best Big Ten teams didn't face each other in the Big Ten championship game, and yet we're comparing. So this had to be the top 4. In this order, obviously, TCU is in there at 3 despite losing instead of 4 because the committee wants to avoid Ohio State, Michigan. I did see that Boom Shakalaka Corrigan, who, by the way, quick tangent, does he look like a younger person in an older wig? Like, I feel like he has a more youthful face than he does
like an
rest
SNL
of his
situation?
Head. Yes. Like, there's something like if Will Forte were to play somebody older on SNL, there was like it's sort of mismatched age-wise, Boo Corrigan. There's like 3 different ages contained on his head. Anyway, there's the tangent. I'm sure he's a very nice man with a nice family. Okay. I don't know what option, like TCU should be in over Alabama and USC and other 2 lost teams because they merely have 1 loss. But because this is a tournament, a quote-unquote tournament, because this is a playoff that is supposed to find the teams who have earned it and are the most deserving based on resume and results and all sorts of factors, of course, TCU fits that. But TCU is not even the best team in their own conference. Neither is Ohio State. But TCU is, as we speak today, slightly worse after the entire body of their work, the injuries, the evolution, the ups and downs. They're a little bit worse than Kansas State, a 3-loss team. We know that. And that's okay. It was a great game. It was fantastic. Kansas State at their best, strong team. But they played yesterday, right? That we know that from TCU. And so I'm bummed that the playoff and that we have to discuss them in the context of a playoff takes away from just an incredible run from TCU. Like Max Duggan as this Heisman caliber performer, this star, coming out of the second string and just looking incredible, even in that performance, giving everything that he had in his being. He threw his mass into trying to win that game play after play.
He was banged up down the stretch, man.
He was getting players away from him, and we'll talk about that game.
Yeah, he won that game. I guess the score has something else to say for it, but he won that game or could have won that game, should have won that game.
He personally did enough.
Yeah. He won the day, let's put it that way.
We'll get into other elements of TCU and an offensive line that is like the 400th best in the country in a bit. But like, I don't know how you actually like make an argument against what we have here. We have Georgia against Ohio State, which Ohio State people will quickly tell you that, they are the team likeliest to beat Georgia, which is fine, but Ohio State never puts anything together on the same day. So I'm good with it. I don't think anybody had any choice. There's no obvious team that ascended to like 7 or 8 that looks so strong at the end of the season despite struggling early. We're like, well, I wonder what they would have looked like. Like, sure, Kansas State beat TCU, but they lost 3 times, including to Tulane. So they don't have the entirety of an argument to say that they'll be in the top 4. So it's fine, but also it would also be a pretty terrific year to have a top 2 BCS type situation.
Well, that was going to be my take. If you want to go on the take journey, my gut instinct is to say that we should just play it off with Georgia and Michigan, and the winner gets the crown. That being said, I am heartened by the fact that the point spreads broke. The Caesars point spreads broke 9 in favor of Michigan over TCU, and 7 Georgia in favor over Ohio State. And in both cases, the lines went down. So not that has any correlation to how the game will actually play out, but at least in the court of public opinion, both games, people tend to think that there will be a little bit closer than that point spread. So that's all we can hope for, because we've seen a lot of blowouts when it comes to these playoff semifinals. I think most of us are asking for, if you don't have a dog in the fight, is for a close game.
Sure.
And so if that's any indication, oftentimes it isn't. If that's any indication, that would be a good early indicator.
Yeah. What's fun about the Georgia-Ohio State game, and obviously we'll discuss this more, the closer we get, is it's the game, I think, it's more likely to be a blowout and it's more likely to be competitive at the same, right? It's either going to be a 3-point game that finishes in a crazy way because Ohio State somehow decides to put it all together after a month of planning and getting healthier, or they just continue to be the flawed team and aren't able to capitalize on situations that they were, against Michigan and a couple other moments during this season. And Georgia just comes out and does what they did to LSU yesterday to them. And they're up, 28-10 before you realize how that actually happened. So, no, it's fantastic.
Here is what happened to set all this up.
Hey, what happened?
It started on Friday night, by the way, the same day as our Atlanta live show, which was terrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrific. Thank you to one and all for coming out to our Atlanta show. We will be releasing the audio of that next week. So if you weren't able to make it out, we had some people who bought tickets, couldn't make it out because life intervened. Don't worry, we will put that audio out there. But thank you again to everybody who supported us by coming on out, shaking our hand. We had a chance to meet some folks at the bar afterwards before we had to skedaddle off to our respective flights, Dan. It was a ton of fun. I say this often. It's truly one of the most privileged things we get to do in this here world. So a ton of fun. Terminal West was awesome. It was great to see everybody.
Agree. It was, I can't say enough good things about the time we had down there.
What opened up the door for Ohio State was USC losing on Friday night in the Pac-12 championship game. USC looked incredible early.
Yeah.
Incredible early. We were at the bar. It's already feeling like a runaway train at that point. We were only at the bar for like 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But the vibe was very much, oh boy, USC is going to get revenge. They're going to run away with this thing. And then suddenly I'm on the plane. I think you're probably about to board yours. And we are messaging back and forth. You're like, welp, looks like Utah withstood the early onslaught.
That's all it is. Yeah.
By USC. They withstood that first wave. And then suddenly they start creeping back into this thing. Before you know it, we're 3 quarters in. Utah is leading 24-17. Before you know it, you're watching USC's defense, and they stopped tackling in the second half. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those deals where over the course of 60 minutes, Utah gradually wore USC down. Utah gradually put themselves in more and more positions to make USC make an open field tackle, and they couldn't.
Right.
Oh, by the way, Caleb Williams.
I was going to say.
Caleb Williams was a bit gimpy and still incredible in his own right, did everything he physically could to try and will this to a different result, but needed more support from the defense in the end. Utah ends up winning this one 47-23, Dan. Wins it impressively going away. They win the conference for the second straight year. They are going to the Rose Bowl to square off against Penn State. We can talk about that one maybe a little bit later on in the show. But I think impressive on a couple different fronts. First off, Caleb Williams remains incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Even with injury, whatever he did, he still did the part, did everything he could to try and will USC to win. But Utah, better team football in the end, and put USC in a position to make mistakes, to score points for themselves. And lo and behold, the Utes come out the victor.
It was a wild watch. And yeah, I watched this one on the plane. Shout out Delta for their live TV. Not a sponsor, could be. Utah, it's withstanding that initial surge, as we actually talked about when you watched Notre Dame USC. We're like, okay, Notre Dame did a good enough job. They're down, but they're not down like crazy. And man, Caleb Williams getting hurt. And I don't know what you said, a little beat up or nicked up or gimpy, whatever you said. He couldn't move. Like, he couldn't roll out to throw a pass. And when he would complete a pass deeper because his offensive line gave him time, he still wasn't stepping into throws. He was just arming it downfield incredibly.
Yeah.
Like, between Caleb Williams and Max Duggan in the TCU game, just 2 absolute star performances. Just the dragging themselves downfield, trying to will their team to success, even though they physically weren't anywhere near, even probably, in Caleb Williams' case, 50%, 40%, whatever he was. I think even still, if USC had a competent defense, I don't know how much of this game you went back and rewatched or watched in detail. The tackling was so abysmal. It was, I think I described it to you as unfathomably bad as I was trying to update you, that there would be a USC linebacker, a defensive back with arms fully wrapped around in the open field, fully corralled a Utah player who then drug the USC player a little while until the USC player sort of got knocked off. Like, I saw USC people saying we should have just called out sick for the Packers. We'd be in the playoff. The defense was the ones. The defense was the group of humans who it could have been just fans playing, right? It was so bad. They were going for strips and just being tossed aside. Yeah. It was an all-caliber playoff offense joined at the hip with an absolute mid-tier Pop Warner defense. And so Utah at a certain point, and they're down Tavian Thomas, but they turned to the more running back depth. They weren't bombing it downfield all that much. Even their longer passes were yards after the catch, just running through the flimsy mannequins that made up the USC secondary. I don't know. It felt like the quintessential Lincoln Riley game, right? Big game, huge offense, and just absolutely torched on defense. And I don't know how that changes anytime soon unless they're, Alex Grinch and strength and conditioning and portal overhaul and, and getting all sorts of SEC and Big Ten players, whatever, in that secondary and linebacking core. It was embarrassing for the Pac-12, what USC put on the field on defense. And Utah and Cam Rising and their own defense saying, oh, we'll just, because they couldn't run the ball, USC, let's just go straight at Caleb Williams. Poor guy, but it's pretty effective. And in the end, it's really effective, right? That you have a quarterback who can't move. When you rewatched, did you think it was at all malpractice that Lincoln Riley left Caleb Williams in there, unable to move, instead of rolling the dice with Miller Moss? I mean, it was, 24-17 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter? Yeah, it wasn't out of hand until the middle of the fourth.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what goes on the sidelines. I'm sure Caleb Williams did not want to come out. He definitely looked to be somewhat wounded.
Yeah.
In there. I mean, he was really feeling it.
Couldn't
so there was part of me, that absolutely felt bad for Caleb Williams. My assumption was just that he demanded he stay in. And still, despite the fact that he was 40%, probably gave him the best chance to win. So provided there wasn't a health situation that he was risking making any worse by being in there. At least from that standpoint and through that lens, Caleb Williams still had to give them the better chance of winning that football game.
I was just wondering as I watched, I'm like, Miller Moss, this bad? Can he not do a little bit more? And look, Caleb Williams might be the best quarterback in the country, so your scale is 40% of that.
Yeah.
So, man, tough to watch because this USC offense is so fun and so killer when they're going. Obviously down Travis Dye, who has lost to Utah 4 times in 2 years. Poor guy. But yeah, I'm happy that we as a college football universe aren't treated to the USC defense on that big a stage against, Ladd McConkey of all people. Ladd McConkey would have 283 yards receiving against this unit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, Utah now going to the Rose Bowl. Looks like they're playing Penn State, which is an interesting matchup. And USC still getting a New Year's Six matchup going to the Cotton Bowl to square off against the Green Wave of Tulane. Damn.
Yes.
More to come on that matchup. By virtue of the USC loss, it took some of the pressure off TCU. I think it did anyway. Yeah. TCU also lost in their conference championship game, as you mentioned here at the top of the show when you went on that mini take journey, Dan. This was an interesting football game, great football game to watch. 31-28 was the final. It did go to overtime. Totally independent of what was on the line here, and the stakes obviously made this one a lot more pressurized, right? But outside of all that, I still thought a good football game. I thought the TCU defense, for the most part, did a pretty good job, as best they could.
Yeah, I thought so.
That has been one of those, I think, unheralded stories about TCU. You talk about Max Duggan and the offense and Quentin Johnston and what they can do through the air, but the defense on occasion, and I think more consistently throughout the second half of the season, especially in the secondary, has been pretty good. And I thought they did as best they could here. But it was the Max Duggan story, at least on the TCU side of things, right? Max Duggan. Yeah, an all-time losing effort for Max Duggan, who was under assault all game long. He had a heroic drive to tie it inside 2 minutes, get the 2-point conversion. But this was ultimately a story of K-State doing what it had to do. K-State surrendering some chances to TCU, but still having the defense, still finding the fortitude to look within and make it happen. They get the big goal line stand in overtime. They find a way to withstand some of their own mistakes. And and get the dub here, Dan. They hold TCU to just 2 of 15 on third downs. So a bit of a mixed bag here, I think, on both sides. And if you're a TCU fan, you look at what Max Duggan did. You look at the fact that they're still through to the playoff, and I think you take a deep breath and like, all right, we're through. If you're K-State, the way that they close the season out is really impressive, and especially on the Will Howard side of things, right? It took a while for him to sort of put down some roots and establish himself as QB1, but after he did, looking forward now, if you're a Wildcat fan, you got to feel great about that, right?
I mean, what are they going to, the Sugar Bowl?
Kansas State right now, yes, going to the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, which will be an interesting test.
The worst Alabama team in recent history, probably. A very beatable situation, to say the least. Because Alabama has been in games against opponents they didn't really get up for and lost. I came away so impressed with both TCU and Kansas State. The elements of TCU that really stood out to me, obviously their ability to make Will Howard uncomfortable, the speed on their defense. Obviously, we talked about Max Duggan. Kendre Miller made plays. Quentin Johnston was obviously a gravitational winter wonder for TCU, with Kansas State having to pay so much attention to him. Kansas State working in a number of backups. I think it was Garcia who was the one who caught a pretty incredible throw and catch for a touchdown in a key moment. And TCU has been able to hide what I think is a pretty woeful offensive line with, quick strike offense, going deep, getting the ball out of Max Duggan's hand, misdirection, using Kendre Miller in creative ways. And they were not good in short yardage situations all season long. This is an offensive line where if you are seeing that, like, it's 3rd and inches, or they're trying to do something to push another team around and get into that zone, into that style of play, they don't really succeed. They're one of the absolute worst teams in the country at that. And they decided when push came to shove to get pushed around and shoved around, because you look at the inside of that line, and even you talk about like the heroic nature of Max Duggan's day. It was especially heroic because nobody was stopping Kansas State players from just absolutely shellacking him in the backfield as he was releasing balls, as he was running the ball and trying to make plays and scrambling for his life. He was scrambling for his life because he has a number of slow-footed, slow-to-react offensive linemen in front of him who got beat over and over again by a good Kansas State defensive line. And so that's where the calculus changed in this one. And for TCU to say, okay, in this huge moment, we are just trusting on the middle of our offensive line to get a push, I thought it was misguided before the play. I thought it was misguided during the play, and I certainly think so now. And so that's what has me pretty worried against Michigan. The Michigan front, which should be healthier, against this TCU offensive line, which I think will get Max Duggan eaten alive, unfortunately, in that matchup. But that was, to me, the bummer in this game, that there were so many great moments of creativity from TCU's offense that in those, those huge leverage moments that they decided to roll the dice with that. Otherwise, no. I mean, Kansas State, Big 12 champion. How cool is that?
Yeah, you were in on K-State before anybody, man.
I was in on K-State thinking it was going to be a great destination for Adrian Martinez. Like, my reasons were not the reasons why it happened. But when you have line play and you have somebody like Deuce Vaughn who will just change the scoreboard in an instant, it matters. And we saw that on his long touchdown. And, with Will Howard, you got to see that, Phillip Brooks and Malik Knowles are actual weapons to be scared of. And so you saw the ceiling of Kansas State once Will Howard got in there, and for them to top it like this, such a cool story. Yeah,
and I mean, the football gods weren't totally anti-TCU in this game.
No.
They had chances that...
By the way, that safety I thought was a safety. I did not think his arm was... I thought he was pump faking it, and it got knocked out. And I thought that was a bad reversal, but yeah.
But I mean, to your point, right? You talk about the offensive line and Max Duggan not being protected.
Yeah.
There were at least 2 really big moments in this game that were a direct result of that. The safety being one of them, right? They get the call when the safety is overturned.
Yeah.
But he had guys hanging on his back. Mm-hmm. And then there was the play, I think it was later on in the game, where, again, facing pressure, back foot throw, pick in the red zone.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows what happens if he gets a little bit more time, if he's not under attack the way he was the entirety of that football game. There was also another play earlier on when I think it was Quentin Johnston fumbled on a nice long pass that went down the left side of the field. K-State was able to knock the ball free. It sort of popped out. So there were opportunities here for TCU to, despite all of those things that went wrong, still tie this one up late in the game, still get the win. Ultimately, they're not able to do so because of that push, right? They decide to go for it. It's 4th and short. No can do, right? No bueno. So Kansas State wins 31-28. Ultimately, on the TCU side, it doesn't matter. They maintain their number 3 ranking. They will still square off against Michigan. I'm excited to see what they look like in that big moment, but I do share that same concern, especially after what we saw from that offensive line against K-State.
And we've seen it it actually adds to how impressive Max Duggan has been this year, is the degree of difficulty and how much he's had to quickly make decisions because of, an offensive line that's in slow motion at times. So, no, it was a great year. And somebody in the comments on verballers.com mentioned, imagine being one of those Kansas State fans that was outraged at the Chris Kleiman hire a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That he was just hired by
He's been great.
He's been
absolutely great.
Terrific. And Colin Klein, by the way. Colin Klein, one of the better national offensive coordinators this year. I'd say so.
You could certainly make that case. One final point on Max Duggan before we move on to the other action.
Please.
251 through the air, led the team with 110 on the ground, and was just a freaking warrior down the stretch. To tie that game up, they relied solely on Max Duggan, mainly on his legs. And he was incredible. He looked really, really good down the stretch when he had to.
Second best team in the Big 12. Third in the country.
Elsewhere in conference championship play, we had Georgia winning 50-30 over LSU. We had Michigan winning 43-22 over Purdue. And we had Clemson winning 39-10 over North Carolina. We can start with Georgia and Michigan. These were two games that I don't think the results were all that unexpected, nor was it how we got to the final result. In both cases, it was the better team coming out on top, although they took different paths to get there. The Georgia game got out of hand early. That was 35-10 at halftime in favor of the Bulldogs. Meanwhile, on the Michigan side, that one was sort of a little bit more in doubt at halftime, right? It took a while for Michigan to settle into that game. Yeah, and it wasn't until the second half that they really asserted their will. But what stood out to you on the Georgia and Michigan fronts?
It's another one of those games. Obviously, their season, Georgia's, was bookended by taking a quality opponent and putting the game out of hand immediately against my Oregon Ducks, of course, to open things up, and then against LSU in the SEC Championship game. It's the comfort with which Stetson Bennett operates. I tweeted this out, that he finished the season against FBS winning teams, leading the nation in completion percentage, quarterback rating, and yards per attempt. And you can make your jokes about him running a car dealership, as I do. You can make your jokes about, he's a system guy. There's all these good players around him. He's got the defense. He's got all these advantages. All true. But he's the only one who led the nation in all of this, right? That Ohio State has these players, and Alabama has these players, and to a lesser extent, Texas has these players on offense. And all these schools have the advantages that Georgia has to whatever degree, and it's Stetson Bennett, who routinely beats great teams efficiently. And so I came away impressed by that. Georgia spreading the ball around to various running backs. Kendall Milton obviously popped in this game. Ladd McConkey early, but he's a little bit beat up. Brock Bowers made plays. And honestly, on the other side of the ball, I don't know how meaningful it is right now, but LSU's ability through the air, they never made it a game, but they consistently move the ball. Garrett Nussmeier comes in, of course, and makes plays, improvising, did a really nice job off platform. Malik Neighbors is just really, really good.
I was really impressed with their passing game.
So good. And was it Booty who had the long touchdown early?
He had the long touchdown. And like you said, it wasn't as though they came back to truly make it a game. But I do think there is something to take away from your team being basically down and out, knowing it's going to lose and still playing as hard as they did. And especially for Garrett Nussmeier to come in to have that opportunity to go up against the Georgia defense. I thought he looked really solid, Dan.
Yeah.
So I was impressed. I came away impressed by LSU. It was not a game that we thought they were going to win one way or the other, and Vegas didn't feel that way either. But I just thought the level of fight that they showed down the stretch, even in a 20-point loss, even giving up 50 points, Like it was meaningful on a different level.
I thought Purdue did a really nice job first quarter, first half of, mixing things up, giving Michigan's defense a bunch of different looks and getting confused. Guys got behind the Michigan defense sometimes, and I came away impressed with that ability. The problem with Purdue against a team like Michigan is star power is going to win out unless you are just so balls to the wall, all gas, no brakes, like going for it in every opportunity, knowing that your defense eventually is going to wear down and that you need to take advantage of every 4th and 5, every 4th and 3, every 4th and 6, especially when it's in plus territory. And Purdue kept trotting out field goal kickers. Now, I looked it up, and there's the college football 4th down bot on Twitter where they use AI or whatever. Everybody uses AI, like you like to say. This show has been AI since 2019.
That's right.
It makes more sense. The win expectancy with the field goal is the same as the win expectancy going. Okay, then go with the aggressive one, right? If it's a toss-up, toss it in the direction of aggression, because going for those field goals, ultimately, you're going to have, Aiden O'Connell's had some interception issues this year. Will Johnson, by the way, emerging as a really strong player for Michigan. Just a ball hawk, and I think he was matched up against Marvin Harrison Jr. last week against Ohio State and did a pretty admirable job, all things considered. Eventually, Donovan Edwards is going to have a crease. Eventually, Cornelius Johnson is going to have a crease. Eventually, Ronnie Bell is going to have a crease. And Purdue just didn't have the playmakers on that level. Good for Michigan. It was slow. It was eventually emphatic. And it was the team with the better players and the better big play quarterback who won out.
Yeah, and, he didn't need to throw. J.J. McCarthy, you mentioned the quarterback. He didn't need to throw.
No, not
because of their style of play, but was good when he had to. 11 of 17, 166, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. The engine, obviously, on the ground was Donovan Edwards. He looked really good. He had 185 and a touchdown. I was impressed with his vision, with his moves, right? You and I talked a little bit off air about this, but he knows where the crease is now that he's gotten a little bit more of a look here as the featured back. I think it's easy to see why you can be excited about Donovan Edwards. He definitely came to play and looked good in this matchup. It also helps that Michigan's offensive line gave J.J. McCarthy so much protection.
Sure.
He was sacked exactly 0 times. I counted 3 times where somebody from Purdue almost touched him.
Oh,
right.
Nice.
It was a really good masterclass from J.J. McCarthy, his elusiveness, his ability to move the pocket. That was part of what I think they wanted when they named him the starter earlier this season. Still saw a little bit of the Tecmo Super Bowl in him, where he's running back, trying to make a hero play. It didn't come back to bite him in this one. I don't know if it will against TCU either, but he looked good when he had to. I was actually quite impressed on the Purdue side with their play calling. Jeff Brom kind of has this tendency from time to time where he can really call a good game, and it helps that he has Aiden O'Connell. It helps that they've been able to make it work at running back. Obviously, Charlie Jones, a.k.a. Chuck Sizzle, has a bit of a rapport with O'Connell as well. He had a big game, 162 and 13 catches, So I was impressed by what we saw on the Purdue side, at least insofar as the play calling. But ultimately what we saw here, despite the fact that it was close in the first half, Michigan's defense tightened it up. In the 3rd and 4th quarters. They continued to play their game to wear down Purdue, and that was all she wrote. So again, 43-22 is your final. Both Georgia and Michigan move on. They continue winning. Georgia's the 1, Michigan is the 2. The other Power 5 championship game, and we'll go briefly through the group of 5 here in a moment. Clemson wins by 29 over North Carolina. Our concern going into this game was that something changed on the UNC front, that over the last couple games, it seemed as if defenses had figured out their offense. That, in essence, was what we saw in this game. Like, Drake May scored a touchdown from about 3 yards out. It was the first UNC possession of the game. They went up 7-0, and it was like pretty much nothing after that, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much nothing after that. We had crucial mistakes from North Carolina. They had a kick blocked. We had a pick six, like a 98-yard pick six that went the other way when UNC was deep inside Clemson territory. It was just a really, really bad final 31 minutes or so for North Carolina where they didn't do anything.
Yeah, they don't have the guys on defense. They don't have the pass rush. They don't have the ability to, once Cade Klubnik comes in, to get in the way of good passes. And you don't need to get in the way of good passes when those passes are overthrown by a different quarterback. And so that makes things a little bit more difficult. Also makes things more difficult when you're playing a really good ACC defense like North Carolina has now played in the last couple of weeks with NC State and now Clemson. Clemson did a better job getting to Drake May and forcing him to improvise, forcing him to make decisions more quickly than I'm sure he'd like to. And that hasn't always been there for Clemson in terms of the pass rush. But I think they were just sort of playing with a renewed energy on both sides of the ball. And whether it was because of North Carolina's defense, whether it was because of Cade Klubnik offering already as a freshman perhaps a more steady hand at quarterback, it was on display. And so a really impressive win for Clemson, and I'm sure Clemson fans are already over the moon about what the future holds with Cade Klubnik, as I'm sure DJU will play quarterback for another
team. Yeah. Clemson, by the way, going to the Orange Bowl right now, 2.5-point favorite against Tennessee. You mentioned Cade Klubnik. He got the nod after two offensive possessions through a touchdown on his first drive. The club level now seating all rows, Dan. I think the club level is now officially opened. He missed just 4 throws in this game. He led the team in rushing on the ground. It wasn't a huge ground assault for Clemson, but did what he had to do on the ground, had a touchdown rushing. Clemson also pulled out some trick plays.
They did.
They had the quarterback throwback. They had a fake extra point. They had like a mega screen. I don't even know what you call it. Like a mega screen is going to be my name for it. When they snapped the ball and the offensive line didn't even move, they just let everybody through, and they ran a play off of that.
You call it the IMAX, right? A
Sure.
big screen? A big effective screen? Yeah.
IMAX. Yeah, I like that. 39-10, your final score. Should we talk through some of the group of 5 matchups as well?
Would love to.
Tulane wins by 17 over UCF. They led wire to wire despite 3 turnovers, almost 650 yards for the offense. Big game for Michael Pratt.
Yeah.
Threw for nearly 400 yards, had 4 touchdowns. Tajay Spears with also a monster effort on the ground, 199 yards. The Green Wave putting a nice cap on an 11-2 season. Again, we mentioned them earlier, but they're going to have USC in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. Talk about that matchup in a bit. Fresno knocks off Boise State 28-16. Fresno made Talon Green look very human.
Correct.
Very human in this game. Jake Hayner didn't have a monster stat line, but came up with big plays when Fresno needed them. Unlike most of the games this weekend, Dan, not a ton of points or yards here.
No.
This was mostly, a defensive battle. Fresno won it the hard way with field position and plays on special teams and not turning the ball over, doing a lot of the fundamental stuff correctly. They win again 28-16. We had Troy 45-26 over Coastal. Grayson McCall was back. Was back. He was out there for Coastal, and he had a pretty good game, but ultimately Troy put up 45
it's bad
on the
defense.
back of a lot of big scoring plays, a lot of big chunk plays to get that 45 and get the win. So good for Troy to win the Sun Belt. UTSA wins 48-27 over the Mean Green of North Texas. North Texas had an early lead about midway through the second quarter, and that's when Big Frank went nuts.
Big Frank
Harris. They went on a 41-17 run to win this one going away. He only missed 5 throws. He had 5 touchdowns. Zachariah Franklin had 10 receptions for 144 and 3 touchdowns. Joshua Cephas had 11 receptions for 84 yards. So 2 guys really getting in on the action there in the passing game. Toledo won by 10, 17-7 over Ohio. Ohio could not get it going without Curtis Rourke. Played good defense. It was close the whole way through, but Toledo wins the Battle of Ohio. And last but certainly not least, not a conference championship game per se, but the Crusaders go full Army and run 55 times for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns to knock off the Shire 35-19. Holy Cross. Are you going to make the 9-hour drive over to South Dakota next week.
It's South Dakota State?
South Dakota State, yeah.
9 hours?
It's a casual 9 hours, though. It's an easy drive.
Do I have to take any of my family members?
I mean, that's your call. It's a great family experience to go to South Dakota State.
No, I would love a solo 9 hour drive to just chill, maybe get some T-Bell halfway through.
You can get a direct flight from O'Hare to Brookings, South Dakota.
I'll drive. I like the me time. Okay, as for the games you mentioned and went through, where is your tamper meter with Michael Pratt and Notre Dame? Is it full Devin Leary? Like, is he worth the tampering time?
Listen, I will take whoever Notre Dame is able to reel in. I don't care if it's Pratt. I don't care if it's Grayson McCall. I don't care. I'll take any of these guys, any of the quarterbacks on any of these teams I'm interested in.
Yeah, just point you in the direction and you'll tamper away. Okay, Good to know. Really nice job defensively from Fresno. That was the big deal to me, that they had playmakers on defense that stepped up even when the offense wasn't fully there. But yes, you're right. They did make Taylon Green and the Boise State offense uncomfortable. Really nice bounce back here for Andy Avalos. Even better year for Jeff Tedford. Surviving a quarterback injury halfway through, which seemed to be a setback, but once Jake Haener was back, really nice finish to their year. They finished, 9-4 with a chance to win, obviously, a 10th. Not bad in Jeff Tedford's first year. It seemed to work out for everybody kind of in that trade but Kalen DeBoer moving on, Jeff Tedford coming back. Really impressive way for UTSA to storm back. UTSA has Troy, I believe, right? We mentioned that in their bowl game. Is that the Cure? Did I get that right? I don't know if you have it in front of you. I'm putting you on the spot. That's on
it's me. Troy against UTSA. I pick them right now. The Duluth Trading Cure Bowl. Get the name right.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Kind of like those commercials. They certainly show them enough. Otherwise, what else did you mention? Toledo, you're right. That was a defensive performance. Obviously, Ohio could get basically nothing going on offense. And I don't know. What else did you mention? UTSA, North Texas. Yeah, North Texas up early. But no, it was a fun day of football. And yeah, Tulane just offensively laid the lumber. And to do it at home on the home field, and I transitive Big 12 championship as well now for Tulane. And they get, for their troubles, to go to the Sugar Bowl. Hell yeah.
Yep. Tulane goes to the Cotton Bowl.
Excuse me. Cotton Bowl against USC. Sugar Bowl is Kansas State, Bama. Yeah.
So other bowl matchups here as we are recording, some that have started to come through and many are still yet to be confirmed, just rumors at this point.
Please.
But we've got Ohio and Wyoming in the Barstool Arizona Bowl.
Okay.
We've got Georgia Southern and Buffalo in the Camellia Bowl.
Wait, hold on. Georgia Southern and Buffalo. Is that a Van Trees Bowl?
It might be a Van Trees Bowl. Yeah.
Am I getting my teams right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl. We've got East Carolina against Coastal Carolina.
Ooh.
Like that. The First Responder Bowl looks like Utah State, Memphis. The Easy Post Hawaii Bowl, whatever that is, we've got San Diego State -4 right now against Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
We've got Houston and Louisiana in the Independence Bowl.
All right.
South Alabama, Western Kentucky. Actually, a low-key, very good game in the New Orleans Bowl.
I would watch that.
That's a very good matchup.
Yeah.
In the New Orleans Bowl. The Boca Bowl is Toledo against Liberty.
Okay.
In the Idaho Potato Bowl, we've got San Jose State, Eastern Michigan. Myrtle Beach Bowl, UConn, hell yeah, squaring off against Marshall.
Great.
Frisco Bowl is Boise against North Texas. Lending Tree Bowl, Southern Miss against Rice. Rice going to the bowls.
Yep.
Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, the aforementioned Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Fresno State against Wazoo.
Okay.
New Mexico Bowl, BYU against SMU. Cure Bowl, Troy against UTSA. And the final bowl game here that's been confirmed is the Bahamas Bowl, UAB against Miami, Ohio, Dan.
So there is the potential, because it hasn't been announced yet, for Oregon Notre Dame. Is that true in the holiday?
That is true.
Oh, man. I'm supposed to be in Mexico. What is the date of the Holiday Bowl? Let's look that up. Holiday Bowl 2022. San Diego. What's the date of it, Ty? What am I missing here?
I don't know. You put me on the spot.
Date. Friday, December 17th. Oh, no.
There you go.
Nope. What? I'm so bad at this. December 28th. There we go. At Petco Park. No longer at the Murph. I won't be in the United States then. But we should do something fun for it somehow, some way.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
We'll see if that comes to fruition. More bowl games will be announced here over the next couple hours or so. We should have a pretty good sense for what the matchups look like. Again, if you sign up at verballers.com, you can be part. If you sign up at verballers.com, you can be part of the Winter Wonders Bowl Confidence Pool. I think our plan is to do a big show and go through all of the matchups in one show.
Of course.
In the past, we've done it in parts, and that just doesn't work for me. You need to really get all of the matchups, all 41 bowl matchups, in one big episode. So we will work on that. In the meantime, we would hope that you would work on getting more folks into this bowl pool, the Winter Wonders Bowl Pool at verballers.com.
I would love that. Do we have the full rankings yet of the top 25? I think I have them in front of me if you want to go over them.
I would love to. So we already read through the top 10, but
Right.
the remainder of the top 25 is as follows. K-State moves up 2 to number 11. Of course, they won the Big 12. Washington, through no fault of their own, drops 3 to number 12. Washington, again, a 10-2 season for what it's worth. We had Florida State at 13, Tulane all the way up to 14 with an 11-2 season. They go up 5. Oregon stands pat at number 15 with a 9-3 season.
Okay.
LSU drops to number 16. Oregon State finishes 9-3. At number 17, we had UCLA, Notre Dame, and South Carolina at 18, 19, and 20. Texas, UTSA, Troy, Mississippi State, and NC State to round out the official top 25, Dan.
Interesting. And sorry, did you mention Miami? I didn't. I
didn't.
zoned out there.
I keep refreshing here. I haven't seen them.
I'm looking. Yeah, weird. Okay. Okay. I don't know how much you want me to add to anything. I don't know how much anybody wants me to add to anything. How do you feel about how this all played out? How do you feel about just instant takeaway from the matchups we have ahead of us in the playoff? Who's in, who's out? Just talk to me from your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I feel optimistic about the playoff matchups. I feel optimistic that they won't be blowouts. I think both have blowout potential, but Georgia-Ohio State is definitely the kind of matchup that I had envisioned. It is the matchup that I envisioned at the start of the year for the national championship. So I think that's a hell of a contest in the semifinal. Ohio State's got some stuff to clean up, but it is two contrasting styles. And though we've seen Ohio State already lose in the matchup of styles, a similar matchup of styles against Michigan, who knows what it looks like in the playoff game with a month to heal up and get ready and prepped. I'm really intrigued by that matchup. The Michigan TCU one to me feels like the more lopsided of the two.
Interesting. See, I don't know if I agree with that, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Michigan will do to TCU what they've done to everybody, and that is run it until your defensive line bleeds, and then find a way to, add on a little bit of padding down the stretch in the second half. But then you look and see what a guy like a Max Duggan did down the stretch against K-State, and you wonder, okay, with a player like that, a difference maker like that on the TCU side, will he find another way to make a play down the stretch and make that Michigan game a little bit closer? So of the two matchups, definitely Georgia-Ohio State is the one that is most intriguing to me. Michigan TCU, not as much. I'm definitely much more on the Michigan side.
Okay. All right. I think I'm more on the Michigan side, but I want to look at the totality of the matchup. I would worry about TCU going down the way that they have early on in games, and Michigan being especially difficult to climb back against.
Just take the air out of the ball, right?
Just take the air out of the ball and continue. Now, look, no Blake Corum does change something because he might be the best player on the team. And so that changes something. The depth at running back takes a hit, so they can't continually keep coming at you with different guys. I think the passing game, if they get involved in a game that they have to win 38-35, suddenly I'm very worried about Michigan, right? If it changes the calculus of what Michigan is and isn't able to do. But no, I think both of these games are fascinating. I see Michigan TCU as being more competitive because TCU appears to have the better quarterback. And so that's a big deal to me. As for Georgia, Ohio State, as I mentioned earlier, I see it going in a number of directions, and Georgia will not have played a team with as many excellent receivers as Ohio State and potentially with as many playmakers on defense, especially up front. But, there's also no accounting for questionable coaching, which Ohio State also brings to the table sometimes. So I think I like the undefeated teams a little bit more, but I got to go back and rewatch and fully make up my mind.
All right, well, there you go, folks. That does it for the college football regular season. We have our top 4. Again, to recap, it's going to be Georgia against Ohio State. It's going to be Michigan against TCU. We're going to be here throughout the totality of December, really the rest of the calendar year, because college football always gives us so much to talk about. Tell your friends going out to verballers.com. Much more to come on the Winter Wonders Bowl Confidence Pool. I promise you we'll be talking a lot more about that in the coming days and weeks, but you and I are going to take a little bit of a breather here. We will continue to publish our episodes on the same schedule we have for the last couple months, so keep it right here, but we'll have more to talk about on the next episode. Not necessarily games to talk about or preview or react to.
Right.
But obviously college football with the transfer portal, with the bowl matchups, with everything we got going on in the coaching carousel, we're never short on content.
Florida State, Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl, according to Andrew in the comments. Also, this is not a news show. Sneak preview of our next show. Deion Sanders is coaching Colorado?
Sneak preview.
He apparently just got a 5-star receiver from the class of, brace yourself, 2025.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders, Colorado coach.
Sneak preview of the next episode. How about it?
Could go as well as it did at Jackson State.
We'll see. For that guy over there,
Good.
my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, thanks again for downloading, for listening, for supporting us all season long. We will talk to you in just a few short days. Much, much more to get through here in the world of college football. Stay solid.
Peace.